Dear facilitators, I greet all of you. Thank you for your efforts in supporting teacher professional development in Ghana. I welcome you to the second phase of the training on cybersecurity and data protection for teachers in Ghana, particularly at the pre-tertiary level. The phase one was about cybersecurity. The phase two is a continuation focusing on data protection. I am your key facilitator, Dr. Lawrence Sapon. On this slide, what you have to do is that you introduce yourself to the participants and also welcome them to the session, minimum of 3-hour session, interactive session. And here you have to tell them about the focus, which is data protection. And you also have to cast their mind back on the first session, what the training was about. You can even ask them to tell what we previously discussed and how it has impacted their life. They have to share the lessons learned and their experiences after the training session before you move on to the next slide. Yeah, just as I mentioned, so this is reflection cues. What did we learn in the first session? And what cybersecurity was about? What did you learn from it? How have you used the knowledge? Share your experience with us. Is there anything about the previous lesson that still baffles your mind, which you may need clarification? If any, then you ask the whole house to bring in their opinions. Establish the fact before you move to the next slide. On this slide, we are talking about what we are coming to learn in this session. So you have to introduce the teachers to the content of this session. And the content is teacher data protection or data protection training for teachers. Why are we presenting this content? Let them know that as teachers, we possess student data, and the data we possess is sensitive because it may be about personal data of the students, academic records, and what have you, which should not be given out, which should be protected. Then you let them read or call somebody to Google, or let them Google the Data Protection Act 2012, Act 843, and let them understand that it provides a framework for protecting personal and other related data. So you can let somebody Google the object of Act 843 or Data Protection Act 2012. Let them Google and read the object so that you discuss. Now you go to the next slide where you tell them the goal and the objective of this particular session. And the goal is to build teachers' capacity so that they can protect personal data and also comply with data protection law in order to save themselves from legal issue and from harassment. If they don't handle data well and escalate, they can embarrass themselves. It's about somebody or organization data that can also lead to a law case or a court case. So to protect themselves, they need to equip themselves with competencies that will help them to protect their personal data and also comply with the law. The objectives of the session are in bullets. So you let them know that in this session, we are aiming at exposing ourselves to data protection policies and procedures. We are also to expose ourselves to how to use password and two-factor authentication in order to protect data. Moreover, we are to expose ourselves to how to protect student data. And finally, we want to learn how to use secure communication tools that can save us from exposing our data to unauthorized persons. We go to the next slide, which is understanding your school data protection policies. So here, the focus is that the teachers should familiarize themselves with their school data protection policies and procedures. So, to ease the discussion or to comprehend this aspect, there are some quiz questions that will stimulate their responses. You ask them what kind of data is collected in your school. How do you store the data in your school? And who has access to the data? The third question, what are the laid down procedures for reporting data breaches? These three questions, you ask one at a time, you pause to elicit responses from them, which may sometimes generate to discussions, arguments, comments here and there. In all, they are learning points to help them to learn. Next slide talks about how to protect sensitive data as a teacher. It is suggested that as teachers, to protect sensitive data, we have to use strong, unique password, and we have to enable two-factor authentication. You can pause here and ask questions. What do you mean by a strong and unique password? Elicit discussion from them. Then also you ask them, how do we use two-factor authentication? Elicit response from them. It may generate discussion. Give room to people to express their opinion. It's not just by answering, but it's the question of how, so that others can also learn from that. So you take your time, ask them, how do we use strong and unique password? What do you mean by strong password? How, in what way can a password be unique? How do we use two-factor authentication? Even the two-factor authentication, what is it about? Yes, you ask this question to elicit their responses in the discussion. Then you go to the next slide. Protection of student data or protecting student data. Some points to follow. One, collect and store data that is necessary for teaching and learning only. Don't collect data when you don't need them, because if it goes out, you may be in trouble. Use secure method to store and transmit student data. How do we use secure method? What are the secure methods? You ask them to share ideas. What secure method they know? Method that can be safer when used to transmit student data. Limit access to authorized person. In other words, don't give access to so many people. You can say limit access to unauthorized person. How do you limit access to unauthorized personnel? It's either restrict unauthorized personnel from having access. But this time, we are saying that people may have access, you may authorize people, but don't allow so many people to have access. Why? Because you may not know the one who will transmit the data unlawfully. So if it's about one person who have access, when it goes out, you know the source. Dispose data securely. Any data that you want to dispose, take your time and dispose it, and ensure that it can completely be disposed. Again, we ask the question, how can we dispose data securely? And elicit views, opinions from others. Then we go to the next. Slide. Protection of student data continue. We are saying that use secure communication tools such as using secure email services and messaging apps. Here, we pause and ask a question. What are the secure email services? Welcome your opinions, their views, and then what are the secure messaging apps? Let them bring their views in the chat. Use encryption. What do you mean by encryption? Again, you allow them to express their views. Two-way factor authentication was coming here, but we have talked about it already. So here you have to probe them whether they still have the knowledge of that. Protection of student data continue. Be cautious with public Wi-Fi. Be cautious with public Wi-Fi. Avoid using public Wi-Fi networks. Then you can also tell them to use VPN. But before we go to VPN, avoid using public Wi-Fi network for sensitive activity. You ask them why. What is public Wi-Fi? And why must we avoid it? Ask them for them to express their views. Use VPN. You ask what is the meaning of VPN? How do you use it? Then you discuss. Ask questions. If possible, let them access the VPN facility on their phones. Keep device and software up to date. Here too, it's a question of how. How do we keep software up to date? You ask them for them to express their views. On to the next. We move on to the next slide that talks about protection of student data. So we are there. Now, the other ways that we can protect data is to monitor and report students. We have to monitor and report any incident. How do we do that? From time to time, periodically, we have to monitor our account and data. If we find any suspicious activity, we have to report it. We also have to report the incident to school administration. As a teacher, if you find any foul play or foul means of data intrusion, report it to the school administration so that the right steps can be followed. Follow the incident response plan. If there's a response plan for how to deal with the incident, religiously follow it so that it doesn't lead to something else. These are the ways that we can protect our personal data or student data. It continues. Best practice for teachers. As teachers, we have to collect and process data lawfully. we have to use the lay down procedures to collect and process data. We have to keep data secure, and we are saying that one of the ways is to use a secure password or two-factor authentication. Minimize data collection. Don't collect data if you don't need it. Be transparent and respect data subject rights. Data subject, the person that you are taking the data, know that they have a right that is protected by law. So you don't do anything that will infringe on their right, because they can sue you. At this point, you pause and you ask them to refer to the teachable notes. In fact, it should be learning notes. The teachable note is part of the package that I'm giving to you. The teachable notes is part of the package that has been given to you. So at this point, you ask them to sit in groups. And whilst in groups, they are to read through the teachable notes. It has six sessions. Every group should go through all, because they need to have knowledge of each session. They can use 1 hour to perform this activity. The participants in group are to write down their key learning points. They are to do group presentation to share group takeaways. So during a group presentation, you can now ask them to ballot and select a session where they will present. So let them sit in 6 groups. At the initial stage, each group is reading session 1 to session 6. When they are done, you ask them to now present a leader. Then they ballot. They select from papers numbered 1 to 6, which is folded in a balloting form. So each ever or whatever number the group rep will select is what the group will present. That's the session that the group will present. If you do the ballot before reading and limit them to reading of the session that they've selected, they may not have fair knowledge of the other session. So let them read the entire sessions 1 to 6, after which you do the balloting for each group rep to select one of the sessions, and that is what the group will present. So you give them about 5 minutes to prepare. Then you start calling them in a way that you get every group to present. While presenting, encourage the rest to ask questions and also share their experiences regarding that session. After this group presentation session, which will take most of the time, you now come here. Summary of the key sessions. The first one is consequence of non-compliance. You are asking them if a teacher failed to comply with Data Protection Act. You know that it can result in fines, damage to reputation, and disciplinary action. What are some of these disciplinary actions? How can it damage reputation? You ask questions to elicit their response or their responses. Then you remind them that we said that you should use methods that are secured to protect data. We can also use secure communication methods. And we said that we should limit access to personal data. Apart from that, we can also participate in data protection training in order to get more knowledge and skills on how to protect data. Assessment questions. These are just to test their understanding of whatever exposure they've had. So what is personal data and how is it defined under Data Protection Act? They'll get the responses in the teachable notes. What are the principles of data protection outlined in the Data Protection Act? What are the consequences of non-compliance with Data Protection Act? They'll get all this from the teachable notes. Otherwise, some can also go online and give the responses for them to learn from that. Before you conclude, call some of the participants to tell what they have learned from this session. How are they going to use that knowledge? And what must we expect from them? How do they expect their school authorities to support them to use what they have learned? What measures are they going to put in place to protect themselves and their students as far as data collection, data storage, and data transmission is concerned? You can now end the session by encouraging them to follow all the things that we have discussed in order to save their image and protect themselves. Thank you very much. This is the end of phase 2, and it is about data protection. Phase 1 was cybersecurity. Thank you. Once again, I am Laurie Chapon, your key facilitator. Have a nice night. Bye bye.